In the year 2347, humanity had spread far beyond Earth. Colonies dotted distant star systems, and spaceships traveled between planets like cars on highways. But even in this age of advanced technology, there were still mysteries waiting to be uncovered. One such mystery arrived unexpectedly at a research station orbiting Earth. Jacob Carter was sitting in his quarters aboard the orbital station when the call came through. A tall man with sharp features and calm eyes, Jacob had spent years exploring the galaxy as an astronaut. Now, he served as the leader of Earth's interstellar exploration team. He wasn't expecting anything unusual that day, but life often surprises you when you least expect it. The message came from deep space, a signal unlike anything anyone had ever heard. It wasn't just random noise. It carried a pattern, almost like a language. Scientists worked quickly to decode it, and what they found sent shockwaves through the station. The signal was a plea for help from a species calling themselves the Caliph. They were dying, their world collapsing under some unknown force, and they needed assistance desperately. Jacob listened carefully as the lead scientist explained the situation. "We don't know much about them yet," the scientist said, pointing to images on a screen. "But based on the data, their planet is in serious trouble. If we don't act soon, they'll be gone forever." Jacob leaned back in his chair, thinking hard. Helping aliens wasn't new to humanity. They had done it before, but this felt different. The Caliph weren't asking for resources or medicine. They were begging for salvation, and whatever was destroying their world sounded dangerous. Some people at the station thought it was too risky. Why should humans risk their lives for strangers? But Jacob saw things differently. He believed that helping others was what made humanity special. He gathered his crew, a small group of skilled individuals who trusted him completely. Emily Dawson, a young xenobiologist, studied alien life forms and knew how to handle unexpected challenges. Ryan Mitchell, a quiet but brilliant engineer, could fix almost anything. And then there was Samantha Brooks, known as Sam, a confident pilot whose quick thinking had saved missions more than once. Jacob stood in front of them, his voice steady. "This isn't going to be easy," he began. "The Caliph are counting on us, and if we turn away, no one else will step up. We're not doing this because it's safe or simple. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do." Emily nodded, her curiosity already piqued. She wanted to learn more about the Caliph and their plight. Ryan looked skeptical, but agreed to join after hearing Jacob's words. Sam grinned, cracking her knuckles. "About time we had a real adventure," she said. The team prepared quickly, loading supplies onto their ship, the Eclipse. It was sleek and fast, built for long journeys across the stars. As they launched into space, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would change everything, for better or worse. Days passed as they traveled toward the source of the signal. Strange things started happening along the way. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. Faint whispers echoed over the comm system, making everyone uneasy. Even the stars outside seemed dimmer somehow. Emily suggested it might be connected to the Caliph's distress call, but no one could say for sure. Despite the growing tension, the crew stayed focused. They talked about Earth, about past missions, and about why they chose this line of work. Jacob reminded them that humanity had always faced danger head-on. That courage, he said, was what set them apart. Finally, they'd reached the destination, a distant planet surrounded by swirling debris. The surface below shimmered faintly, like it was breathing. Jacob stared out the window, his heart pounding. Whatever awaited them down there, they were ready, or so they hoped. The Eclipse descended slowly toward the mysterious planet, its engines humming softly as it pierced through layers of thick, swirling clouds. The crew sat in silence, their eyes glued to the view screen. What they saw took their breath away. The surface below was a mix of vibrant colors. Deep blues, fiery reds, and shimmering golds, but it was also scored. Cracks ran across the ground like veins, glowing faintly as if energy pulsed beneath them. Towering structures rose in the distance, their shapes jagged and alien, hinting at a civilization both ancient and advanced. Samantha Sam Brooks gripped the controls tightly, her focus unwavering. Flying into unknown territory always made her nervous, but today felt different. Something about this place unsettled her. "Stay sharp," she muttered under her breath, more to herself than anyone else. Ryan Mitchell, sitting nearby, glanced up from his tablet. He had been running diagnostics on the ship's systems, trying to pinpoint why minor malfunctions kept occurring. "It's not us," he said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "Whatever's messing with the ship, it's coming from the planet." His voice carried a note of unease. Jacob Carter turned to look at him, his brow furrowed. "Explain." Ryan hesitated before speaking. "I've never seen anything like it. There's some kind of interference, a field or signal, that's affecting our equipment. It's subtle, but it's there. And it's getting stronger the closer we get." Jacob nodded thoughtfully. "Keep monitoring it. If it gets worse, let me know immediately." He trusted Ryan's instincts. The man rarely jumped to conclusions without evidence. Still, the news didn't sit well with anyone. Emily Dawson leaned forward in her seat, her fingers tapping nervously against her leg. She had studied countless alien species during her career, but nothing prepared her for this. This wasn't just another mission. It felt bigger, stranger, almost otherworldly. As the eclipse broke through the final layer of clouds, the crew caught their first glimpse of movement below. Shadowy figures darted between the ruins, too fast to make out clearly. Were they Caliph, or something else entirely? No one spoke as Sam guided the ship toward a flat expanse near the edge of what looked like a crumbling city. The landing process was smooth, but the moment the engines powered down, an eerie stillness filled the air. "Suit up," Jacob ordered, his tone firm. "We don't know what's waiting for us out there." The team moved quickly, strapping on their gear and checking their weapons. Though none of them wanted to admit it, fear lingered in the back of their minds. They had trained for situations like this, but training couldn't prepare you for the unknown. When the hatch opened, a rush of cold wind swept inside. The air smelled metallic, tinged with something unidentifiable yet vaguely familiar. Jacob stepped out first, followed by Emily, then Ryan, and finally Sam. The ground crunched beneath their boots, brittle and cracked. In the distance, the glowing fissures pulsed rhythmically, casting strange shadows that danced around them. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The crew froze, scanning their surroundings. From behind a cluster of broken spires emerged a group of towering creatures. Their bodies were sleek and insectoid, covered in shimmering crystalline plates that reflected the dim light. Eyes like molten glass stared at the humans, unreadable and intense. One of the beings stepped forward, its movements deliberate and graceful. It raised a claw-like appendage, and a series of melodic tones echoed around them. Emily gasped softly, recognizing the sounds. "It's communicating," she whispered. "They're using harmonic frequencies." Jacob held up a hand, signaling caution. "Let's not jump to conclusions," he said calmly. "We need to understand what they want before we do anything." He activated the translator device attached to his suit, hoping it could decipher the message. After a tense moment, a robotic voice crackled to life. "You are human. You have come." The words were simple but carried weight. Relief washed over the crew, though their guard remained high. Jacob took a step forward, meeting the creature's gaze. "We received your call," he replied evenly. "Tell us how we can help." For a brief moment, the alien seemed to hesitate. Then it lowered its head slightly, a gesture that might have been respect or warning. "Follow," it said simply, turning and gesturing for them to come. The crew exchanged uncertain glances but followed anyway. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the planet itself resisted their presence. Strange whispers began to echo in their ears, soft and indistinct, like voices carried on the wind. Emily shivered, clutching her scanner tightly. Whatever awaited them ahead, one thing was certain. This mission would test every ounce of courage they possessed. The crew followed the towering Caliph through the ruins of the alien city, their footsteps echoing against the cracked and uneven ground. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, broken only by the faint hum of energy pulsing from the glowing fissures in the earth. Jacob Carter led the way, his hand resting near the weapon strapped to his side, ready for anything. Behind him, Emily Dawson scanned the surroundings with her handheld device, her eyes wide with both awe and apprehension. Ryan Mitchell brought up the rear, constantly checking the readings on his tablet, which flickered erratically due to the strange interference. The Caliph guide moved gracefully, its crystalline exoskeleton shimmering under the dim light. It stopped at the entrance of a massive structure that loomed ahead, a jagged tower that seemed to pierce the sky. The doors slid open silently, revealing the cavernous interior lit by soft, bioluminescent panels embedded in the walls. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped sharply, and the whispers that had followed them outside grew louder, almost like voices trying to form words. At the center of the room stood another Caliph, larger and more ornate than the rest. Its body sparkled with intricate patterns that shifted and changed as if alive. This was Zanara, the leader of the Caliph. She regarded the humans with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, her multifaceted eyes scanning each member of the team. "You are smaller than we expected," Zanara said through the translator device, her voice melodic yet tinged with doubt. "Many others came before you. Greater powers, advanced civilizations, all failed. Why should we believe you can succeed where they could not?" Jacob met her gaze without flinching. "We may not be the strongest or the smartest," he replied evenly, "but humans have something no one else does: courage. We don't back down when things get hard. That's why we're here." Zanara paused, considering his words. Then she gestured for them to follow her deeper into the structure. They walked through long corridors lined with holographic displays, showing images of their planet's past. Thriving cities, lush landscapes, and skies filled with vibrant colors. But as they progressed, the scenes shifted. The once beautiful world began to crumble, consumed by darkness. The final image showed a swirling void spreading across the surface, devouring everything in its path. "This is the void spawn," Zanara explained. "It appeared suddenly, feeding on our energy, draining life from our world. It is relentless, growing stronger every day. Even now, it spreads closer to your ship." Emily frowned, studying the holograms intently. "What is it? A natural phenomenon? A weapon?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "It is. Alive," Zanara responded. "A creation gone wrong, unleashed by those who sought power beyond understanding. Now it consumes all, leaving nothing behind." Sam Brooks crossed her arms, her expression grim. "If it's alive, then it can be stopped," she said firmly. "Everything has a weakness." Ryan nodded in agreement but added cautiously, "Assuming we can find it in time. Whatever this thing is, it's messing with our equipment. If it gets worse, we might lose communication or navigation entirely." Jacob turned to Zanara. "Tell us what we need to do. We didn't come this far just to turn back." Zanara hesitated, her posture stiffening. To destroy the void spawn, one must enter its core. There, its connection to our world can be severed, but no one who has attempted this has returned. Silence fell over the group. The weight of her words hung heavily in the air. Emily swallowed hard, clutching her scanner tighter. Sam glanced at Jacob, her jaw tightening. Ryan stared at the floor, his mind racing through calculations and risks. Finally, Jacob spoke. "Then we'll find a way to survive. That's what humans do. We adapt, improvise, and overcome. We won't let fear stop us." Zanara studied him for a moment longer before nodding slowly. "Very well. Prepare yourselves. Tomorrow, you will face the void spawn." As the crew left the chamber, the reality of their situation settled in. They were about to confront something ancient, powerful and deadly. But despite the odds, they knew one thing for certain. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or weapons. It was the unshakable will to fight for what mattered, no matter how terrifying the enemy. The next morning, the crew gathered in the main chamber of the Caliph structure to prepare for their mission. Zinara stood nearby, watching them with a mixture of hope and doubt. She handed Jacob a small device that glowed faintly, explaining it was a beacon designed to guide them toward the void spawn's core. "It will lead you," she said, her melodic voice steady, but tinged with sadness. "But remember, once you enter its domain, there is no turning back." Jacob nodded, his expression serious. He turned to his team, who were already checking their gear. Emily carried a portable scanner modified to detect energy signatures, while Ryan adjusted the settings on a prototype weapon designed to disrupt energy fields. Sam double-checked the oxygen levels in their suits, ensuring they'd have enough air for the journey. Everyone knew the stakes, and though fear lingered in their eyes, determination burned brighter. Before leaving, Jacob addressed the group one last time. "This isn't just about saving the Caliph," he said firmly. "If this thing keeps growing, it could spread to other planets, including Earth. We're here because we can stop it. Trust each other, stay focused, and don't let the fear get to you." With that, they stepped out into the alien landscape once more. The beacon pulsed softly in Jacob's hand, pointing them toward a distant horizon, where shadows twisted unnaturally against the ground. The closer they got, the stranger the environment became. The air grew heavier, thick with an invisible tension that made every step feel like wading through water. Glowing tendrils snaked across the cracked earth, pulsing faintly as if alive. As they ventured deeper, the whispers returned, soft at first, then louder, overlapping in chaotic murmurs. Each voice seemed to echo fragments of their own thoughts, dredging up memories they had long buried. Emily froze suddenly, clutching her head. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. It's talking to me." Ryan grabbed her arm gently. "Stay focused, Em," he urged. "It's trying to mess with your mind. Don't listen." Jacob glanced back at them, his jaw tight. "Keep moving. Whatever you hear, ignore it. It's not real." Despite his words, the voices only grew stronger. For Jacob, they'd brought echoes of past failures, missions gone wrong, lives lost under his command. For Sam, they whispered doubts about her abilities, questioning whether she was truly brave enough to face what lay ahead. Even Ryan, usually so calm and logical, found himself struggling against visions of isolation and despair. Then came the first attack. Shadowy tendrils erupted from the ground, lashing out like whips. They moved too fast to dodge completely, wrapping around Sam's leg and pulling her down. She shouted in alarm, reaching for her weapon. Jacob fired a burst of energy from his rifle, severing the tendril, but more sprang up instantly. "Fall back," Jacob ordered, firing repeatedly as Ryan used his prototype weapon to create a temporary barrier of light. The tendrils recoiled, giving the team a brief chance to regroup. Emily scanned the area frantically, her hands shaking. "It's feeding off our emotions," she exclaimed. "Fear, anger, it's using those feelings to grow stronger." Jacob nodded grimly. "Then we fight smarter, not harder. Stay calm, stick together, and focus on the beacon." They pressed onward, fighting off sporadic attacks as they followed the glowing device. Along the way, they encountered illusions, distorted reflections of themselves standing in their path, whispering cruel truths. One such vision showed Jacob surrounded by phantom figures of people he'd failed to save. Another depicted Emily trapped in darkness, telling her she wasn't smart enough to solve the problem. But each time, the crew pushed through, refusing to give in. Finally, after what felt like hours, the beacon led them to a massive chasm. At its center floated a swirling mass of blackness, crackling with energy. This was the void spawn's core, a living nightmare radiating malice and hunger. As they stared at it, the ground beneath them trembled and the shadows closed in tighter. "We found it," Jacob said quietly, gripping his weapon tightly. Now comes the hard part. The crew exchanged determined glances. They had faced countless dangers to reach this point, and though fear still lingered, so did resolve. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't brute force or advanced technology. It was the courage to stand against the impossible, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. And now, they were ready to put that courage to the test. The crew stood at the edge of the chasm, staring into the heart of the void spawn. The swirling mass of blackness pulsed with an unnatural energy, sending waves of cold dread through the air. Glowing tendrils snaked out from the core, writhing like living things, as if testing the boundaries of their courage. Jacob tightened his grip on his weapon, his mind racing. This was it, the moment they had trained for, prepared for, and feared. "We can't just charge in," Ryan said, his voice low but steady. "It's too dangerous. We need a plan." Emily nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the settings on her scanner. "I'm picking up intense energy fluctuations coming from the core. If we disrupt its frequency, we might be able to weaken it, but we'll need to get close, too close." Sam stepped forward, her jaw set. "Then we go in together. No one gets left behind." She glanced at Jacob, who gave her a small nod of approval. They all knew the risks, but turning back wasn't an option. Not now. Jacob turned to the group, speaking firmly. "Ryan, you're our best shot at disabling this thing. Set up your prototype weapon as close to the core as possible. Emily, keep scanning for any changes in its behavior. Sam and I will cover you while you work. Whatever happens, stay focused." The team moved quickly, descending into the chasm with cautious steps. The ground beneath them felt unstable, cracking under their boots as if the planet itself was beginning to collapse. Shadows danced around them, twisting into grotesque shapes that mimicked their worst fears. Emily stumbled when a shadowy figure resembling her younger self appeared in front of her, whispering doubts about her abilities. "You're stronger than this," Jacob said sharply, pulling her back to reality. "Don't let it win." As they approached the core, the void spawn reacted violently. Tendrils lashed out, faster and more aggressive than before. One wrapped around Ryan's arm, yanking him off balance. He shouted in pain as the tendril began to drain his energy, his suit's systems flickering erratically. Without hesitation, Sam fired her weapon, severing the tendril and freeing him. "Thanks," Ryan gasped, clutching his arm. "I owe you one." "No time for gratitude." Sam shot back, reloading her weapon. "Keep moving." They pressed on, dodging attacks and fighting through illusions designed to break their resolve. At one point, Jacob froze as he saw visions of his family. People he hadn't seen in years, their faces filled with disappointment. His chest tightened, but he forced himself to shake it off. "Not real," he muttered under his breath. "None of it's real." Finally, they reached a position close enough to the core for Ryan to deploy his weapon. He knelt down, his hands flying over the controls as he calibrated the device. "I need 30 seconds, he called out, sweat dripping down his face. "Maybe less if I'm lucky." Jacob and Sam formed a protective circle around him, firing relentlessly at the tendrils that surged toward them. Emily stayed close, her scanner beeping wildly as she monitored the void spawn's reactions. "It's adapting," she warned. "It knows what we're trying to do. Then we don't give it a chance to stop us," Jacob yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos. The void spawn retaliated with fury, unleashing a barrage of attacks that nearly overwhelmed them. One tendril struck Emily, knocking her scanner from her hand. She fell to her knees, dazed. Ryan looked up, panic flashing across his face. For a moment, it seemed like everything would fall apart. But then something unexpected happened. Ryan dropped his tools and lunged toward Emily, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her to safety. "Stay with me," he shouted, dragging her behind the makeshift barrier Jacob and Sam had created. "I've got you," Emily whispered, her voice shaky but grateful. In that moment, something shifted between them. a bond forged in the heat of battle. Fear still lingered, but it no longer controlled them. With seconds to spare, Ryan activated the weapon. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the device emitted a pulse of light, striking the core directly. The void spawn shuddered, its tendrils retreating momentarily as if wounded. The crew exchanged brief smiles, knowing they had struck a blow. But the fight was far from over. "We did it," Ryan panted, relief washing over him. "For now, anyway." Jacob shook his head. "Not yet. It's still alive. And it's not done with us." The void spawn's core began to glow brighter, pulsing with renewed strength. The crew braced themselves, ready to face whatever came next. Humanity's courage had brought them this far, but the hardest part was still ahead. The void spawn's core pulsed violently, its glow intensifying as if it were gathering strength for a final assault. The crew stood their ground, battered but resolute, knowing that the battle was far from over. Jacob tightened his grip on his weapon, his mind racing through options. They had weakened the creature, but not enough to destroy it. "We can't keep fighting like this," Emily said, her voice trembling. "It's too strong. Every time we hit it, it just grows back stronger." Ryan nodded grimly, his hand still clutching the prototype weapon. "The pulse disrupted its energy field, but it's adapting faster than I thought possible. If we don't do something drastic, it'll overwhelm us." Jacob glanced at the churning mass of blackness before turning to his team. His expression was calm, though his heart pounded in his chest. "Then someone has to go inside," he said firmly. "Into the core itself. That's the only way to stop it." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Everyone froze, staring at him in stunned silence. Sam was the first to speak, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Are you serious? You can't mean that. It's suicide." "It's the only option," Jacob replied, his tone unwavering. "If someone enters the core and severs its connection to this world, we might be able to destroy it completely." "No," Sam snapped, stepping closer. "I won't let you do it. You're the leader. If anyone goes, it should be me." Ryan shook his head, stepping forward as well. "You're both wrong. I'm the one who built the weapon. I know how it works better than anyone. If there's even a chance of success, it has to be me." Emily looked between them, her eyes wide with fear and frustration. "Stop it," she cried. "All of you. This isn't helping. We can't afford to argue when every second counts." Jacob raised a hand, silencing the group. "Enough," he said sharply. "This isn't up for debate. I'm going in. End of discussion." His decision sparked protests, but Jacob wouldn't budge. He turned to Sam, his gaze steady. "You're the best pilot we've got. If things go south, you need to get everyone out safely. Ryan, you've done more than anyone could ask. And Emily, your knowledge is invaluable. Trust me, I'm the right choice for this." Sam opened her mouth to argue again, but the look in Jacob's eyes stopped her. She clenched her fists, anger and helplessness warring within her. Finally, she nodded reluctantly. "Fine. But if you don't come back, I swear I'll never forgive you." Jacob gave her a small, sad smile. "Understood." He turned to Ryan next. "Set the weapon to overload. When I give the signal, activate it. It'll act as a distraction, giving me time to reach the center." Ryan hesitated, then nodded. "I'll make sure it counts." Jacob took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He strapped a compact energy cutter to his belt and adjusted the settings on his suit. "Stay close to the beacon," he instructed. "It'll guide you out if anything goes wrong." Before leaving, he paused, looking at each member of his team one last time. "Remember why we're here. Remember who we're fighting for. No matter what happens, humanity doesn't back down, not even in the face of death." With that, he stepped toward the core, disappearing into the swirling darkness. The others watched in silence, their hearts heavy with dread. The void spawn reacted instantly, tendrils lashing out furiously as if aware of Jacob's presence. The ground beneath them trembled, and the air grew colder. Inside the core, Jacob felt the oppressive weight of the void spawn pressing against him. Shadows twisted around him, forming visions of his past failures and deepest regrets. But he pushed forward, focusing on the beacon in his hand. The path ahead was narrow and treacherous, lined with pulsating veins of energy that threatened to pull him off course. Finally, he reached the heart of the core, a glowing nexus of pure energy. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Jacob activated the cutter, aiming it at the nexus. As he worked, the void spawn screamed, a sound so deafening it felt like it would shatter his mind. Pain shot through his body, but he refused to stop. Humanity's fate rested in his hands, and he wouldn't fail. Outside, the crew waited anxiously. The beacon flickered, signaling Jacob's location. Then, suddenly, it went dark. Sam's breath caught in her throat. "No," she whispered. But before despair could take hold, a blinding flash erupted from the core. The void spawn convulsed, its tendrils flailing wildly before collapsing entirely. The ground stabilized, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Jacob had done it, but at what cost? The blinding flash from the core faded slowly, leaving behind an eerie silence. The crew stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the chasm where Jacob had disappeared. The void spawn was gone. Its tendrils had dissolved into nothingness, and the oppressive energy that had filled the air was now replaced by a strange calm. But the cost of victory weighed heavily on everyone. Sam clenched her fists, her chest tightening as she stared at the dark void where Jacob had entered. "We can't just leave him," she said, her voice shaking with anger and grief. "There's no way he's gone." Emily placed a hand on Sam's shoulder, though her own hands trembled. "We don't know for sure," she whispered. "Maybe the beacon malfunctioned. Maybe he's still alive." Ryan didn't say anything. He stood quietly, his face pale, staring at the ground. His prototype weapon lay at his feet, its power drained after the final overload. He felt responsible, as if there had been something more he could have done to protect Jacob. "We need to check," Sam insisted, stepping forward. "If there's even a chance." Before she could finish, a faint light flickered in the distance. It came from deep within the chasm, pulsing weakly but steadily. The crew exchanged glances, hope sparking in their hearts despite their fear. Without hesitation, they moved toward the light, climbing carefully over the jagged rocks and debris left behind by the void spawn's collapse. As they drew closer, the source of the light became clear. It was Jacob's beacon, lying on the ground near what remained of the core. But next to it was something, or someone. Jacob lay unconscious, his suit battered and scorched, but alive. "Jacob!" Emily cried, rushing to his side. She checked his vitals, relief washing over her when she found a steady heartbeat. "He's breathing. Barely, but he's alive." Sam knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she touched his shoulder. "You stubborn idiot," she muttered, her voice cracking. "You actually did it." Ryan joined them, helping to lift Jacob gently. "Let's get him back to the ship. We've got medical supplies there. If anyone can pull through this, it's him." The journey back was slow and tense. Jacob remained unconscious, his body frail from the ordeal. The crew stayed close, keeping watch for any signs of danger, though the planet seemed eerily quiet now that the void spawn was gone. The glowing fissures in the ground had dimmed, and the once hostile environment felt almost peaceful. When they reached the eclipse, Ryan and Sam carried Jacob inside, laying him on a medical cot. Emily worked quickly, attaching monitors and administering oxygen, while Ryan powered up the ship's systems. Sam stood nearby, her arms crossed tightly, unable to take her eyes off Jacob. "He'll make it," Emily said finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft but firm. "His vitals are stabilizing. Whatever happened down there, he survived." Sam let out a shaky breath, sinking into a nearby chair. For the first time since the mission began, she allowed herself to feel the weight of everything they'd been through. Fear, exhaustion, and relief all crashed over her at once. Ryan leaned against the wall, his head bowed. "We couldn't have done it without him," he said quietly. "He saved us all." Outside, the Caliph gathered near the ship, their crystalline bodies shimmering softly under the fading light. Zinara approached, her posture respectful and solemn. Through the translator device, her melodic voice echoed inside the cockpit. "Your leader has shown courage beyond measure. The debt we owe you cannot be repaid." Sam stepped outside briefly to speak with her. "He's not dead," she said firmly. "Not yet. And he won't be. Humans don't give up, not even when things look impossible." Zinara nodded, her multifaceted eyes reflecting gratitude. "Then may your people continue to shine brightly among the stars." Back inside, the crew prepared for departure. Jacob stirred faintly, his eyelids fluttering open for a brief moment. His voice was weak, barely audible, but his words carried strength. "Did we stop it?" Emily smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. "Yes, Jacob, you stopped it." With that, the eclipse lifted off, leaving the scared surface of Kalos Prime behind. As they broke through the atmosphere, the crew looked out at the vast expanse of space, their hearts filled with both sorrow and pride. Humanity had faced one of its greatest challenges and emerged victorious. But the memory of Jacob's sacrifice would stay with them forever, a reminder of the courage that defined their species. The journey back to Earth felt longer than the trip to Kalos Prime. The crew of the Eclipse worked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Jacob lay unconscious in the medical bay, his condition stable but fragile. Emily monitored him constantly, adjusting the equipment and checking his vitals every few minutes. Despite her calm demeanor, worry lingered in her eyes. She had seen people recover from worse, but there was something about Jacob's sacrifice that made her fear the worst. Sam spent most of her time in the cockpit, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. Her hands gripped the controls tightly, even though the ship was on autopilot. She replayed the mission over and over in her mind, the decisions they'd made, the risks they'd taken, and the cost of their victory. "Stubborn idiot," she muttered under her breath, referring to Jacob. But deep down, she knew his actions had saved them all. Without him, the void spawn would still be spreading, consuming everything in its path. Ryan stayed busy tinkering with the prototype weapon, analyzing the data it had collected during the final confrontation. He wanted to understand how the void spawn worked, hoping to prevent similar threats in the future. But no matter how hard he focused on the task, his thoughts kept drifting back to Jacob. Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that he should have done more, that he could have found another way to stop the void spawn without risking Jacob's life. Days passed slowly, the weight of what they had endured pressing heavily on everyone. Finally, as they approached Earth's orbit, Jacob stirred again. His eyelids fluttered open, and for a moment, he seemed disoriented. Emily rushed to his side, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're safe," she said softly. "We're almost home." Jacob blinked, trying to focus. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "The void spawn. It's gone," Emily replied, smiling despite the tears forming in her eyes. "You stopped it, Jacob. You saved us all." A faint smile crossed Jacob's face before exhaustion pulled him back into sleep. For the first time since the mission began, the crew allowed themselves to feel a glimmer of hope. They weren't just bringing home survivors, they were bringing back a hero. When the Eclipse touched down at the orbital station above Earth, news of their success had already spread. Scientists, government officials, and reporters gathered eagerly to welcome them. As the hatch opened, Sam stepped out first, followed by Ryan and Emily. They looked weary but proud, their faces telling the story of everything they had faced. Then came Jacob, leaning heavily on Sam's arm for support. The crowd erupted into applause, cheers echoing through the hangar. Jacob raised a hand weakly, acknowledging the praise but clearly uncomfortable with the attention. To him, this wasn't about glory. It was about doing what needed to be done. Later, during a debriefing session, the crew recounted their experiences. Emily explained the biological aspects of the void spawn, while Ryan presented his findings on its energy patterns. Sam described the battles they had fought, emphasizing the bravery of their leader. When it was Jacob's turn to speak, he simply said, "We did what anyone would have done. We stood our ground because we had to." The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into applause once more. Though modest, Jacob's words carried profound meaning. Humanity wasn't defined by its technology or power. It was defined by its courage to face the unknown, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Afterward, the crew was given time to rest and recover. Reports poured in from across the globe, praising their efforts and hailing them as heroes. Yet none of them felt truly triumphant. They had lost part of themselves on Kalos Prime. Pieces of their innocence, their confidence, their sense of invincibility. But they had also gained something invaluable. Proof that humanity's greatest strength lay not in weapons or shields, but in the unyielding spirit to protect others, no matter the cost. As Jacob gazed out at Earth from the observation deck, he thought about the sacrifices made and the lives saved. He didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as someone who had done his duty, and perhaps that was enough. Weeks passed after the crew's return to Earth, and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. The story of their mission spread far and wide, inspiring people across the globe. News outlets hailed them as heroes who had saved not only the Caliph, but potentially all of humanity from the Void Spawn's threat. Yet for Jacob and his team, the aftermath was bittersweet. They carried the weight of what they had seen and done, memories that couldn't be erased no matter how much time passed. Jacob spent most of his days in quiet reflection, avoiding the spotlight despite the public's fascination with him. He attended ceremonies and gave speeches when required, but he always seemed distant, as if part of him remained on Kalos Prime. Sam noticed this and tried to pull him out of his shell, inviting him to join her for meals or short walks outside the station. "You can't keep shutting everyone out," she told him one evening. "You're allowed to feel proud of what you did." "I'm not sure I am proud," Jacob admitted, his voice low. "I made a choice, to go in alone, and it worked. But what if it hadn't? What if I'd failed and left you all behind?" Sam placed a hand on his shoulder. "But you didn't fail. You gave us a chance to survive. That's something to hold on to." Meanwhile, Emily threw herself into her work, studying samples brought back from Kalos Prime. She hoped to learn more about the Void Spawn's origins, determined to ensure nothing like it could ever threaten another world. Late at night, she often found herself staring at the glowing fragment Sinara had gifted them, a piece of the Void Spawn's remains. It served as both a reminder of their victory and a warning of dangers that might still exist elsewhere. Ryan focused on improving the prototype weapon, refining its design based on data collected during the mission. He worked tirelessly, driven by guilt over Jacob's injuries. "If I'd been smarter, faster, maybe none of this would have happened," he muttered to himself one day while adjusting the device's settings. Emily overheard him and stopped to offer reassurance. "You did everything you could," she said gently. "We all did. And because of that, we survived." The bond between the crew grew stronger in the weeks following their return. They leaned on each other, sharing stories and laughter to cope with the lingering fear and sadness. They knew no one else could truly understand what they had endured, not even those who celebrated them as heroes. One evening, the entire team gathered in the observation lounge overlooking Earth. The planet below shimmered brightly against the darkness of space, a breathtaking sight that never failed to remind them why they fought so hard to protect it. Jacob stood near the window, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said finally, breaking the silence, "the Caliph called us Fearsome. At first I thought it was just a word. They were trying to flatter us. But now I think they were right. Humans aren't fearless. We get scared, just like anyone else. But we act anyway. That's what makes us fearsome." Sam grinned, raising an imaginary glass. "To being fearsome, then." "To being human," Emily added softly, smiling. As they laughed and talked, the scars of their journey faded slightly, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing against unimaginable threats, not through brute force, but through courage, teamwork, and sacrifice. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, they faced it together, knowing they had already conquered the impossible once before. And somewhere among the stars, the memory of Jacob's bravery lingered, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humankind. Months had passed since the crew of the Eclipse returned from Kalos Prime, but their story continued to resonate across Earth and beyond. The Caliph, now free from the Voidspawn's grip, began rebuilding their world with newfound hope. They sent messages of gratitude to humanity, calling them saviors and allies. For the first time in centuries, they reached out to other civilizations, sharing knowledge and forging connections. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy grew stronger, earning respect not just for its technology or resources, but for its courage. Back on Earth, life moved forward, yet the mission remained a defining moment for Jacob and his team. They became symbols of resilience, proof that even ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when faced with overwhelming odds. Schools taught lessons about their bravery, and statues were erected in their honor. But for the crew, the true legacy wasn't in monuments or speeches. It was in the lives they had saved and the bond they shared. Jacob eventually retired from active duty, choosing instead to mentor young astronauts preparing for interstellar missions. He often spoke about the importance of teamwork, adaptability, and courage. "Fear isn't something you overcome," he would say during training sessions. "It's something you carry with you and use to keep moving forward." Sam returned to piloting, taking command of her own ship. She led exploratory missions to uncharted regions of space, driven by a desire to uncover what else lay hidden among the stars. Her confidence inspired those around her, and she became known as one of the best pilots in the fleet. Yet she never forgot the lessons learned on Kalos Prime, how fear could either paralyze or propel you, depending on how you faced it. Emily dedicated herself to xenobiology, studying alien species and ecosystems to better understand the universe. Her research helped humanity prepare for future encounters with unknown threats. She kept the glowing fragment of the Voidspawn close, using it as a reminder that danger always lurked where least expected, but so did opportunity. Ryan stayed grounded, working tirelessly to improve Earth's defenses against potential threats. His prototype weapon evolved into a standard tool for exploration teams, designed to disrupt energy-based entities like the Voidspawn. Though he still carried guilt over Jacob's injuries, he found solace in knowing his work protected others from similar dangers. The crew reunited occasionally, gathering at the orbital station to share stories and reflect on their journey. Each meeting felt like stepping back into a chapter of their lives they would never forget. They laughed about the small moments, the arguments, the victories, the quiet conversations amid chaos. And though they sometimes grew quiet, thinking of the sacrifices made along the way, they reminded each other of why they had persevered, to protect not just themselves, but countless others. One evening, as they sat together watching Earth spin silently below, Emily broke the silence. "Do you think we'll ever face something like the Voidspawn again?" she asked, her voice soft. Jacob smiled faintly. "Probably. There's always another challenge waiting out there. But if we do, we'll face it the same way we did before, together." Sam nodded, leaning back in her chair. "And if anyone tries to stop us, we'll remind them who we are. Fearsome humans." They all laughed, the sound echoing warmly in the quiet room. As they gazed at the stars, they knew their mission hadn't ended. It had only begun. Humanity's journey into the cosmos was far from over, and whatever lay ahead, they would meet it head-on. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was the refusal to let fear define them. And in that spirit, humanity would continue to shine brightly among the stars, proving time and again that even in the darkest void, hope could prevail.